We're there. We have finally reached the pinnacle. We have hit the point that I said we would hit earlier, before Overwatch 2 even came out and when 5v5 was announced. If you don't remember, back then I made a video and I spoke about how 5v5 would completely ruin the game for multiple reasons, but one of them being that hit scan was going to be way too powerful, and it was going to take an over-reliance of people playing flank heroes for the game to be functional. So I said the primary comp would likely be Widow Tracer, and it would be the Widows fighting each other and the Tracers likely protecting each other. However, instead what we got was the supports getting Omega Ultra buffed into the fucking moon as a compensation for the fact that obviously Widow's going to get deleted every 2 seconds. But now we have a problem. We have a problem with the fact that because the supports are now good enough to take care of a Widow, Widow is now uncontestable because there's no off-tanks. However, if you weaken the supports to the point where they're not capable of protecting a Widowmaker, then they're also not capable of protecting themselves in a lot of cases, which then makes Tracer, Genji, and Sombra way too strong. So you can't have powerful supports because it makes hitscan obscenely powerful due to the lack of an off-tank, but you also can't make them weaker because then it makes them useless. And that's 5v5. It also would fuck up the tank roll pretty substantially. So, that's 5v5 for you. That's what I said would happen years ago, and everyone was like, no, you're wrong. Turns out, I'm right. So, everyone absolutely despises playing against Sombra. They can't stand it. They think the hero's bullshit. I agree, the hero was bullshit. Sombra gets nerfed. Okay, well, now Widow is bullshit. Now Widow's bullshit. Get Widow out of the game. And I agree, yeah, Widow is bullshit. But, here's the thing. Sombra was bullshit, but Sombra was keeping Widow in check. Now Widow is not being kept in check anymore because Sombra is nerfed. Okay, well then how do we deal with Widow? Okay, well now every comp is just going Widow until another hero becomes viable in killing a Widowmaker. Which will probably be Sombra again when they inevitably buff her, because the only reason a lot of players picked her was to kill a Widow. So, what a fantastic place that we're in. It's incredible how a lot of players that kind of denied 6v6 realize, or did not realize initially, how important the off-tank role actually was when it came to alleviating pressure. When it, like, things like Widow, where off-tanks, things like D.Va, would completely stop her from doing things like that, and it became a skill matchup between the D.Va and the Widow. The Widow would quickly try and occupy an off-angle, try to maybe get a kill before the D.Va notices, D.Va flies in and tries to get the kill, and then the Widow has to stay alive. It was an interesting skill matchup. Now, Widow was still bullshit then, but at least the D.Va could actually do something about getting rid of her without leaving her whole team behind. Now, if you go Widow, and then they go D.Va in response, all you have to do as the Widow is to intentionally be very far back so that when the D.Va commits dive to you, she's wildly out of position, giving your team a huge opening where the enemy team don't have a tank anymore because they're off fighting you instead. So then they all just press W into your team, they full rush into your team, and they likely just mop your whole team because, well, your team doesn't have a tank anymore because they're off shooting Widow, right? But they have to be off shooting Widow, because otherwise the Widow's uncontestable, because the only DPS that was capable of really killing her was Tracer, Genji, and Sombra. Genji's terrible, Tracer struggles to access high ground, and Sombra was the only strong one that could access high ground, where she's not very strong anymore, which makes it the peeling a Sombra is even easier, which makes Widow obscenely powerful. But Widow's been obscenely powerful for a very long time. There are just a lot of issues that kind of come together to make Widow the way she is. The fact that he or she herself is as powerful as she is obviously one of the contributing factors, but there are being supports in the game like Illari, where she can just throw the pylon down and just fuck off and just can do whatever she wants now, and the pylon will save the Widow. It makes her bullshit. And then you have other heroes like Lifeweaver and Kiriko and things like that, where Lifeweaver might not be the strongest, but being able to pull out a Widowmaker is crazy powerful. Imagine they commit 5-man dive to your Widow, you just pull your Widow right out of that dive, no problem. and that she saved. You saved her from pressing from dying by pressing E. It's bullshit. But keep in mind that if you did not have heroes like this that were capable of doing things like this and saving heroes like this, now again I argue this every time I say 5v5, supports need to be absurdly powerful because a lot more duels happen in 5v5 because there isn't an off tank to help control any angles or things like that. So more duels happen, which means that the game is more deathmatchy. And a way you prevent the game from being more deathmatchy is by making it so that duels are less successful, so that team fights last longer, so that there's more complexity in a team fight. Okay, well the way you do that is by making support stronger, so they're better at keeping things alive to make sure that duels obviously aren't won or lost too quickly. Then, because of that, you don't actually make it so that the people taking the duel are worse at dueling. They're still just as good at dueling. They instead just have to interact with a bullshit character now that is going to negate a lot of their effort by simply pressing buttons, because if they don't, then the duel would be too easy to take in the first place. That's why you had things like, oh, they have Widow, I'm going Sombra. Okay, they have insert hero, I'm going this hero. And you get a big counter swapping issue because taking the skill matchup is never worth it because the supports are so strong. There's never been a worse time to take a skill matchup because all of the supports are just, well, I press E. Well, I press shift. He's fine. Oh, I'm pressing E. And they're fine. But that's just the nature of the game in 5v5 because, I know I talk about 5v5 a lot, but it's terrible. But that's just the nature of the game in 5v5 because if it's not that way, then the format wouldn't work. You'd be playing a deathmatch simulator. People don't realize how much the off-tank actually did in that game. So that's why we have things like Widowmaker completely ruining the game right now and have been ruining the game for a very long time. I mean, even back in 6v6 when we did have an off-tank, Widowmaker was ruining the game. But at least she had potential to get shut down. So, what am I saying? Do I think Sombra needs to be Omega buffed back into the absolute, just obscenely powerful dog shit hero that she was before? No. I'm glad she's terrible. But it opens up the eyes to people that didn't realize that certain heroes being insanely OP was kind of required for other heroes to not be. Because now Widow's ruining the game. And you kind of have to destroy Widow's identity to make her not do so. I mean, Widow's kind of always been broken. As long as she can one-shot, she'll be ridiculously powerful because she's just way too good at controlling space. Widow should not exist in a game like this. It doesn't make sense. The entire game is not about getting kills. It's not about things like that. It's purely a map control game. It's a resource management game. And Widowmaker doesn't really interact with the resource management or the map control part outside of just I'm making this area dangerous because I could potentially one-shot someone in it, therefore the area is dangerous, therefore I can kind of claim the map as mine in that area, which is, of course, not healthy for a game because she's doing what a tank does, which makes Widowmaker a tank hero. That's probably a pretty bizarre thing to hear, but Widowmaker follows a similar output of pressure as a tank does. Ish. Now, obviously, tanks are going to have pressure cycles, whereas Widow has more uptime, generally speaking. But Widow kind of has the same job of controlling a large amount of space by herself to give her team the opportunity to go and do things, making Widowmaker a tank hero. So, there's that. A lot of people are probably going to be like, no, Widowmaker's not a tank hero. But let me explain a bit more, because people obviously are going to do whatever they can to disagree. Okay? What does a tank do, generally speaking? Generally speaking, most of the time a tank hero is using their larger health pool and their closer damage to try and create space for their team to occupy, so their team gains a larger percentage of map control, which means that they get a bigger advantage in choosing what angles they want and things like that. Tanks make it easier for their team to position and give them a larger resource or map control advantage. Widowmaker does the same thing, just differently. Whereas before, a tank would generally go in with their bigger health bar, they would mitigate a lot of damage, they would occupy an area, they would then make that area dangerous so enemies can't walk into it, and then they would wait and hold the space while their team take the angles they want to take. That's what a tank does. Widowmaker instead holds a long sightline, threatening the potential of a one-shot, making that space extremely dangerous, so that if enemies walk into it, they could potentially be one-shot, making it so they insta-lose the fight. Sounds a bit like what a tank does, just from miles away. So, I'm just gonna say it from now on. I think Widowmaker's a tank hero. And this is a new thing. Okay, people will warm up to this. Widowmaker's a tank hero, okay? And I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Anyway, have a good day. Goodbye. Have a good day. Have a good day.